This is the Royal Report.
Good evening, welcome to the Royal Report. I'm Caroline DeRusso. Here's what we've got coming up on the show for you tonight. Now, our late Queen, God rest her soul, liked Meghan at their first meeting. I know, we'll be talking about a new book with our panel next. Harry and Meghan get political, weighing in on a Senate hearing. And Netflix have got more Harry and Meghan projects planned. What the actual? We'll be speaking with the brilliant Esther in London. But first, what do we expect from the Sussexes in 2024? Well, 2023 was a train wreck of a year. Huge ups, huge downs, and polarising opinion on almost every matter. It's been a year since the release of Harry's memoir, Spare. I often wonder if there's been any introspection about that particularly ridiculous book. While it may have been a bestseller, it was a millstone for Harry's credibility and was the subject of much ridicule throughout the year. Special mention, of course, to our dear friends at South Park. Now, it's only early on in 2024, but we have heard whispers that the Sussexes do have new projects on the cards with Netflix. They've been in contact with the palace to check on the health of the King and the Princess of Wales, and they're already focused on the next Invictus Games. These are all signs of things heading in the right direction. Now, it's the much-needed reset we've spoken about. We know how great Harry is when he focuses on things he's truly passionate about. You'll recall him speaking at the Invictus Games last year.
These games are not solely about medals, PBs, or finishing lines. They are about overcoming any and all perceptions that have held you back.
Can we please have a bit more of that? Now, living in California, the Sussexes are obviously more celebrity than royal in the traditional sense, despite their royalty being the source of their celebrity. But anyway, that said, they still have material influence and there is still plenty of scope for them to advocate for worthy causes. Maybe and hopefully this year will be different. Maybe King Charles's health scare has made Harry realise there are more important things in life than throwing barbs at your own family for commercial gain. It's a new year and I'm prepared to be optimistic about the Sussexes. Let's see what the year brings us. Joining us now is News Corp columnist Angela Mollard and the host of the Daily Express's Royal Roundup, Pandora Forsyth. Ladies, welcome. I've just spoken about Harry and Meghan's shift from royalty to celebrity and the different sort of influence it has. Now, Angela, we've seen them support some great causes, but many are divided on their use of their soft power. Obviously, they can do whatever they want. You'd expect them to use their influence if they have it.
Well, look, they certainly have influence. They still command attention, and that means that they are constantly drawing focus. And if you think about the person that Harry was, he calls himself a spare. I think there is power in the title spare. What it means is that he's always had one foot in royalty, but he's always had one foot in real ordinary life. He was able to go and fight in Afghanistan, so he understands ordinary people. And that's what made him so likeable, so relatable before he met Meghan. That Harry is still there, and I think if he can channel that, some have called it soft power, I call it relatability, I think it is always going to be there. Harry has the potential to connect with people. He and Meghan just have to choose the right projects and to look at real sincerity in the projects that they choose.
Pandora, welcome to the Royal Report. It's great to have you with us. The Sussexes' use of influence hasn't always landed flush, though, has it?
No, it hasn't. They've very much gone on the Hollywood factor. They've got the book, they've got the Spotify deals, they've got the Netflix deals, which apparently we're going to see more of in terms of projects soon. But, of course, now they're not within the fold. They don't hear the secrets of the royal family in the day-to-day because they're not working within it. So what really have they got left to say? Well, some people say, well, Meghan could have a book if she wanted to. And whenever there is Harry and Meghan, as we both well know, as we all well know, there's lots of speculation around them and their relationship with the royals still. Even though they're not working there, they are still part of the royal family. And that is the Hollywood appeal, which is earning them millions of dollars.
Now, Angela, a great example of where they've used their influence really well is the Invictus Games. And they're heading to Canada shortly to promote it. What's planned for this trip a year out from the Games?
That's right, Caroline. They are a year out for the Games. They're going to go to some training sessions in Vancouver, Whistler area. They're also going to meet with competitors and their families. Canada is very dear to them. Of course, it's where they conducted their relationship before anybody knew about it. And of course, it's the place where Harry stepped out with Meghan for the first time in public, which was at the Toronto Invictus Games back in 2017. The first time we really sort of saw them together, those wonderful shots. There was lovely kind of interaction with a little kid who was stealing Harry's popcorn. It was really magical, and it actually makes you feel a bit sad to think about them. Not sad that they're going back to do the work with the Invictus Games. I mean, that is the real strength in Harry's power. But the fact that when you think about them in Canada, you think about what they could have been in the Commonwealth, those titles that the Queen gave to them in terms of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, and the fact that they gave that up. So, yeah, look, it's great the work they do with Invictus, but they could have had far more reach.
And Pandora, the Invictus Games is Harry at his best, that veteran-related advocacy. We also know he's heavily involved in wildlife-related advocacy. Is there more scope in the pipeline for this sort of work?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the one field where Harry still gets a ton of respect from, and rightly so, and that's his military ties. Yes, he has given that up now, but that is the one thing that people will listen to him on. In fact, so much so that he got an aviation award just a couple of weeks ago, which did hit the headlines because it was mixing with Hollywood. But nevertheless, it is something that he is still proud of. And that is something that he will be bringing forward and shining a light on. And I think that is something that people actually will listen to, is his military ties and the Games itself. Despite the fact that, of course, this will bring, is Meghan going to turn up? When is Meghan coming? And all the relationship drama surrounding the Games. Nevertheless, the message is still there, and he is very keen for the media to listen and to push those messages out, despite the fact that he has had a very mixed relationship with the media. This is something that he will agree with the media on in terms of coverage for that.
Now, Angela, there's a new royal book. Now, you've seen plenty of royal books in your time. This one gives us an insight into the Queen's view on Meghan. And it's not all bad news, is it?
No, you're quite right. And yes, I have read a lot of royal books in my time of varying quality. Look, this is by Ingrid Seward, who was the editor of Majesty magazine. She has some good sources for this, including Lady Elizabeth Anson, who is the Queen's cousin. So, you know, a named source. There are a lot of royal books with unnamed sources. And what she says is that the late Queen would speak to Lady Elizabeth every week, and that what she thought of Meghan was she thought very highly of her. She thought she would do some extraordinary work, that she would be brilliant at the forefront of the Commonwealth. But she had a couple of really interesting observations. One was that she thought that Meghan's wedding dress was too white, that Meghan, obviously being a divorcee, should not wear such a bright white dress. And she also wasn't in favour of Charles walking Meghan up the aisle. If you remember, Meghan's father, Thomas Markle, of course, didn't attend the wedding, and Charles stepped in to walk down the aisle. Well, the Queen apparently wasn't a huge fan of that.
Pandora, Prince Philip's alleged views are also shared in this book. Tell us about them.
Yeah, Prince Philip, didn't he make some headlines over the years with his comments? He didn't hold back, and that was one of the things that I think the public loves so much about him in many ways, even though at times obviously very inappropriate and very un-PC, given today's view on things. But he was, of course, referring to Wallis Simpson and King Edward when he abdicated, and he was making alleged comments in reference to them, and also bringing it back to Meghan and Harry. And they, of course, have stepped down from senior working royal duties and moved to the other side of the world, as far away from their family as possible, and making sort of brief, fleeting visits to the UK when they can, and if it's urgent enough to. So yes, that's what he was saying. But Prince Harry has got a huge amount of respect, and he did have a huge amount of respect for him and for the late Queen. So I'm sure their opinion really did matter when it came down to it. And of course, the Queen, the late Queen, was in charge, wasn't she? So whatever she said went, and she did like Meghan. So I'm sure she was very much in charge of that whole conversation and that whole debate, I imagine, around the dinner table.
I love the way that Harry refers to the Queen as the boss. I thought that was absolutely excellent and very
so
true,
good,
obviously,
so
of her
good.
station. Angela, the royal family being pulled at the seams. Obviously, 2 senior royals still out of action for the time being. Interesting report this week about the importance of Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, not only to the royal family now, and we know she's working very hard at the moment, but also into the future. What are they saying?
Look, there's a lot of talk about the fact that Sophie will be Kate's right-hand woman when she becomes Queen, much in the manner that Princess Anne is the right-hand woman to King Charles. I think this is interesting. Look, if Sophie was in a royal yearbook, you would have her as the quiet achiever. She's 59, she does a lot of work, but she was stung because back in 2001, I was working around in the UK around this time. There was she got entrapped by a tabloid newspaper with a fake sheik, and she said some dreadful things about British prime ministers and other people of high importance. She had to apologise to them, and I think as a PR girl, that was her job before she married Edward, and she tried to continue with that job. It really, really stung her at the time, and I think she's taken a very cautious approach since. But she is wholly reliable. She steps into areas like Camilla, talking about domestic violence. She talked recently about young girls and menstruation. She shines the spotlight on lots of areas that don't really get a lot of airtime, and I think she will be. She was a huge favourite of the Queen. Absolutely, they used to watch television together in the evenings, and I think she's a very loyal, now very, very reliable member of the royal family.
And Pandora, I've only got about 20 or 25 seconds less. What's your view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Echoing everything that's just been said. This is really a time where people are stepping up into their roles. We've got a new monarchy here. They really do need to all come together, especially as the Waleses are out of action and the King for the next week or so. So it's really giving the opportunity for people to shine a light on topics that they really want to be shone upon. The Queen, for instance, with her domestic abuse campaigning as well. We've seen in the
there. I need to get to a break.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry for that. Angela Pandora, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up next, Harry and Meghan turn political, weighing in on a recent Senate hearing. Esther Kraku joins us with the details. Welcome back to the show. Joining us now is writer and broadcaster Esther Kraku. Esther, we all agree the Sussexes need to earn a living, but there have been plenty of mutterings. We understand that Netflix has started to tease about what's on the cards. What on earth do we know so far?
So we know that the Netflix chief content officer has confirmed that their $100 million Netflix deal with the Sussexes are going to continue into 2024, which is good news for them because unlike Spotify, they didn't just cancel the deal altogether. Apparently, the Sussexes have many projects in the works that Meghan herself said they're very excited for, and they want to make projects that make people feel. So clearly, they have some stuff in the works. Now, what worries me or worries most people is when the Spotify deal fell through because the Archetypes podcast didn't do that well. That was the Sussexes effectively promoting themselves as their own brand and getting people to basically fall in love with themselves as people. When you move into the production side of things, when you're producing content, you actually have to have some experience. You have to have a lot of knowledge in the industry. Now, we know that they have hired members of staff, but they seem to be hemorrhaging members of staff at the same rate. I mean, they've had 17 people leave the organization since it started a few years ago. And, you know, one of the things that you have to question is these people don't really have that much experience in anything. Meghan was an actress. She wasn't exactly, you know, Martin Scorsese, so we don't really know what kind of expertise she's bringing in on that front. And Harry really hasn't done a hard day's day of work really, other than you know, being in the army. And you can even argue then he's still in quite a protected position. So the question is, if Netflix are going to continue you know, funding this couple and giving them this $100 million deal, are they actually going to get their money's worth? Now, we have heard murmurings that there's going to be a Harry and Meghan series part 2. We obviously know the first series did quite well. I think it was the most watched series on Netflix. So they're going to do, they're planning a second series. But again, there's so many questions that come with that. First of all, the sheen has worn off the couple. They don't seem to generate as much interest. The intrigue has worn off. Is it going to be, you know, a kind of basically a saga of them whinging about the royal family again? Again, you can't make something like that work a second time. The shine has worn off. So there are many questions as to how that is going to work. But Netflix has confirmed that at least for 2024, their $100 million deal is safe, and the couple will still get a chance to produce content with them. Whether it's content that will resonate with the public, we're not sure.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair observation. And now, look, we know the royals have traditionally kept out of politics and the courts. Harry's the first royal to give evidence in 130 years. But the Sussexes have broken that tradition again and commented on a recent US Senate inquiry into the regulation of social media sites. Now, in a statement, they said, amongst other things, we applaud the bravery and determination of the thousands of parents around the country whose advocacy resulted in this hearing. This is an issue that transcends division and party lines, as we saw today at the Senate hearing. It's the time to make the necessary change at the source to keep our children safe. Now, they also released this video alongside the statement.
When the car was first invented, there wasn't a seatbelt. And what happened? People started to get hurt. People started to die. So you started to change the car.
We need to get out of this idea that, you know, the young kids, there's something wrong with them. It's the world that we're allowing to be created around them.
Esther, it might be a particular issue that transcends party lines, but it's still quite unusual, isn't it?
It is quite unusual where royals are concerned, but I think most people are considering Harry and Meghan less and less royals and more kind of just famous couple doing their own thing. They released that statement on behalf of the Archewell Foundation because they've obviously done a lot of work with safeguarding children online. But it's not surprising. I mean, this couple has routinely broken royal protocol. I don't know if you remember before the last US general election, they released a video to vote for love and to choose hope. So they've never really shied away from wading into politics. With this particular statement that they submitted to the Senate hearing, I understand why they did it. I understand why the members of the Senate committee wanted them to do it, because obviously it's getting publicity for this hearing. Mark Zuckerberg testified at the hearing as well. So it makes sense and it's very on brand. But if you're talking about sort of what's traditionally expected from royal members of the royal family, this is not it. But they've made it very clear that they're not interested in following any sort of protocol or being active members of the royal family for that matter.
Now on to the Queen and Camilla. Look, she's not always been a favourite, but she's played the long game and she has managed to come out as Queen. There's a great piece in Tatler this week about Camilla's evolution from the most hated woman in England to the nation's grandmother. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's been very interesting observing Queen Camilla's rise, should I say. I mean, this was probably one of the most hated women in Britain, particularly with the whole brouhaha between Charles and Diana. And then when they got married in 2005, even the Queen, getting the Queen's permission was seen as quite a big deal. But actually, with Kate out of action for basically until Easter, and the King recovering from prostate surgery, we're really seeing Queen Camilla shine. She's been at the hospital frequently. We've seen her photographs. She's been holding down the fort. She's going to be taking on some of the engagements that King Charles has to take on, as well as Princess Catherine. And she's now really being seen as the glue that's holding the royal family together. I mean, King Charles has been very open about the fact that she's been his support. She's been someone who's really steadied him and really helped him focus. She's always, said that King Charles needs to slow down and he's a bit of a workaholic. And you can see that there's a real benefit, not just to the monarch, but to the country, to have them having this mutual support of each other. And, the Queen has had to deal with a lot. I mean, she's had to have a whole kind of PR rebranding scheme just to rehabilitate her public image after King Charles's acrimonious divorce with Princess Diana. But you can see that she's really come out on top. And at the end of the day, she seems more human to most people than sort of what the tabloids painted her as, certainly in the 1990s and the early 2000s. And I think as people of age, as the country's grown with Queen Camilla, they've also grown to understand her, and they've understood her circumstances and how, you know, life is not perfect, no one is perfect, and sometimes people make mistakes, but they can come back from them.
Now, we've spoken numerous times on this show about the Family Feud, and it's generally centred around Meghan and her inability to adjust to life in the palace. A report this week suggests it might not be the case.
Yeah, so apparently the feud between William and Harry started before even Meghan entered the picture. Apparently there were differences between their work ethics and their approaches to various charities, particularly when it came to their charities in Africa and wildlife preservation. So William preferred a more local community approach, where local communities were empowered to actually conserve, animal preservation territory and all of that, where Harry wanted to have a more, I suppose, active or forceful approach, where he would force external organizations to meet quotas in terms of preserving wildlife. I mean, he did say in his book Spare that he and William got into an argument about Africa, and Africa being William's, as he quotes him saying. But clearly they're both quite passionate about wildlife and their activities in Africa, and they might have a different approach to it. But we do know that they've obviously had skirmishes, as siblings do, before Meghan entered the picture. I think it was just exacerbated by the fact that obviously when Harry married Meghan, and he effectively shoehorned her into the institution and didn't really give her time or give them time for a role to develop or a place for them to develop organically in the royal family, that just heightened tensions between the brothers. And now we obviously know that's nothing compared to everything that's happened since the release of the book Spare. And I do believe that the current situation is going to calcify. I don't think there's really any coming back for at least the brothers at this point. And it will be a bit awkward when King Charles eventually does pass away and the crown passes to King William, for him to have an acrimonious relationship with his own brother. That's not going to bode very well, but sometimes these things happen and you can't really blame anyone other than Harry. You can blame Harry.
Esther Kraku, thank you so much for your insights. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Now, royal family news is always full of curiosities, and this one is no different. Between 1921 and 1924, a mini royal residence was created for Queen Mary, the Queen Consort of King George V. It was made with the stunning workmanship of over 1,000 designers, and it comes complete with cars, a sewing machine, a vacuum cleaner, a library, and, of course, a crown. Now, to celebrate the 100th year of its creation, it will be on display with a full exhibition at Windsor Castle. And that's the show for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Up next is News Night. Good night, and we'll see you next week.